Hey everyone, today we're going to cover the checkpoint system. Now before we get straight into the scripting, I just want to cover a few key points which you might like in your game. First of all, sort of a necessary feature really, we want each checkpoint to have a text label, because what good is it just having a coloured platform? You don't know what stage you're on without the Leaderstats GUI. So we want a number to be on each stage, so this one would be number 2, number 3, this one will have number 4 on it, and so on, just so we know what stage we're on easily. So to do that, what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to actually delete this spawn location that we added on the first stage, because that was only temporary. We are going to sort that out today. Under checkpoint 1, I'm going to add in a SurfaceGui, and on this SurfaceGui, I'm going to add in a text label. The reason we use a SurfaceGui is because it allows us to put user interface on a part surface. Now you'll see that this text label is on the wrong side. We want it to be on the top where we're standing. We don't want it to be on the side. So if we click on the SurfaceGui in the properties panel, if we scroll down, you will see where it says face, it's at front at the minute. We want that to be on top. And if for some reason the top is underneath, just go from top to bottom. It might just mean you've got your part rotated the wrong way, or maybe you've scaled it incorrectly and it's on the side, and it's just pick the one that's on the top. It might take some trial and error if your part has been rotated or scaled strangely. Now I'm going to click on the text label, and first of all give it a transparent background, because we don't want it to be white, we want to see the colour of the part. I'm then going to make the size 1, 0, 1, 0. This just means scale of 1, 1 in the x and y, and a scale of 0, 0 in the x and y offset, and an offset of 0, 0 in the x and y. The offset, we don't need to worry about that, especially with Surface GUI, because the part sizes are constant. It's not like typical graphical user interface where screen sizes vary with different devices. We don't really need to worry about it. Now if we scroll down, I will make this text, probably make it white, and I'm going to hit text scaled and turn that on. I'm also going to make the text just the number 1. Now as you'll see, even with text scaled, it still looks a bit small. So what we can do is go to the Surface GUI, and underneath sizing right at the bottom where it's on pixels per stud, if we change this from 50 to 25, it will double the size. However, it will lose quality, because what this is saying, obviously one stud, that is a ROBLOX unit, which looks, I think, this sort of width, as you can see here. That is one stud, I believe. Yeah, I think that's one stud. This is all new. I've not actually played around with this, but it's quite nice. But back to what I was saying, yeah, this just means for every stud, every ROBLOX stud, there's 25 pixels. So obviously, if we add this 100, this is a really high definition, high quality text. But if we put this to maybe 15, it's a lot bigger, but it's lower quality. So you need to choose whether you want to sacrifice quality or size. In my case, I'm going to sacrifice quality. If you wanted to still have high quality and a large size, you'd be better off using decals and creating images. So you'd have a stage 1 image, a stage 2 image, and that way you can set the image to the size of the part, import it to ROBLOX, set it as a decal, put the decal on the image. It's much more work, but it would look nicer. Now just before I rotate this number 1 around, I actually want to rotate the checkpoint, because what you'll see is this blue arrow. If we use the move tool and click on the checkpoint, the blue arrow is facing this way and this way. Now the blue arrow is the direction the player will also face when they spawn in. So for example, let me quickly add in under model a spawn location again, just here, and you'll see the blue arrow is facing the same way as the checkpoint blue arrow. If I now hit test and play, you'll see we are facing this direction. Now obviously when I spawn in, I want to be facing towards the stage. So I want to rotate this 90 degrees along the green rotation here, so that the blue arrow, when we hit move, is facing this way. And that means that when we hit play, we are facing the actual stage now. So let's mimic that in our checkpoint. Let's rotate our checkpoint so the blue arrow will be facing this way, which means we need to go clockwise 90 degrees. like so. Now you'll see that our number 1 still isn't facing the right way, but now that we've adjusted this, if we quickly click on it, you'll see blue arrows that way, so we know that we're going to spawn facing the right direction. So what we can do is click on the text label and change the rotation to, we want it to be 90 degrees because we want it to be this way. And you can sort of see how that works a bit more. So what I'll do is just do that once more. So I'll duplicate the SurfaceGui, put it into the number 2. And once again, I need to actually rotate number 2 because it's not facing the right way. So rotate it 90 degrees clockwise, and this, I need to go into the text label and change this text to the number 2 because it's stage 2. You can also play around with how the text looks. I'm not going to do that just for the sake of saving time, but do feel free to play around and make it look how you want. Now let me just quickly rotate all of the stages. I'm going to have to do it individually because if we select them all then rotate, we're going to get some weird stuff going on. So let me just quickly rotate all of these. Let me turn on the rotate snap under model and set that to 90 degrees, which I suggest you do if you haven't already. And I'm just going to rotate this 90 degrees, each one anti-clockwise. I do believe each one needs rotating. If not, I'll correct them after when we test everything. But I'm pretty sure everything needs rotating 90 degrees anti-clockwise because we duplicated, if you remember last video, we duplicated each checkpoint. So they are all going to have that same, I believe, y-axis rotation. Now, actually, we can check this by just dragging the SurfaceGui on each, and if it's facing the stage, then we know it works. The yellow one's a bit hard to see. I might actually add an outline. Yeah, perfect. I'm just going to delete the SurfaceGui from number 2 quickly, just because under the text label on the first checkpoint, I want to make the text stroke transparency, I can't speak, to 0. And what that does is just add a little outline. We could go better, we could add in, there's some UI sort of designs we could add in a gradient, we could add in corners, so that's not really, that doesn't apply to text. We could add in, the one I'm looking for is here somewhere, UI stroke, which is where we could make the thickness 5 and we've got a nice thick stroke, which is what I'm going to actually do. Now you might be thinking, if you have gone ahead and made loads of stages, oh now we've got to duplicate this, drag this in each part. But no, we don't. I'm going to show you a quick way of doing this. I'm not going to explain it too much because we are going to write some code, and this code is all, it's going to be multiple lines of code on one line, which you can do, so it just looks a bit confusing. So under view, we're going to go to command bar. Now I will actually put this at the top of the description under a resources header. So if you go in the description, you can copy and paste this command bar, assuming you've named everything exactly how I have. Workspace.Checkpoints, your number system's the same as mine. You've got the SurfaceGui, the text label. You don't actually need the text, just the SurfaceGui named exactly how it is as on my screen. Then it will work for you. What we need to do is, first of all, clone the SurfaceGui, and for each checkpoint we're going to paste the cloned SurfaceGui into it. So first of all, say local clone equals workspace.Checkpoints.1, or we're going to have to use square brackets, then quotation marks and 1. Just because we've got the SurfaceGui in our first stage, make sure it's in the first stage and the first stage only. Now we will say dot SurfaceGui, and that's it. Colon clone. No, we'll just do that. We don't need to do the colon clone. Now we're going to do a space, and we'll say for I, v in pairs workspace.Checkpoints colon GetChildren do if v colon is a open brackets quotation marks part close quotation marks close brackets, then clone, then we'll say local, then local new GUI equals clone colon clone. I know that doesn't make sense, my naming system here, but don't worry about it. newGui.Parent equals and newGui.TextLabel newGui.Text equals v.Name. End, and enter. Now I do recommend you just go copy that from the description, because otherwise you are going to end up with probably errors if you even do one thing wrong here, and it's very hard to sort of diagnose errors from the command line because all the code is on one line. Now what you'll see this is done, let me just quickly go to view and close the command bar again. Now what you'll see this is done is it's actually made our text for each checkpoint automatically and done the numbers. Now under number 1 you'll see we have 2 SurfaceGUIs. We can just delete one of them. It's because we've cloned everything, so it's just that first one, because we already had one in there, it's just added another. Now the way this has worked is what we've done is we've created a clone variable with the SurfaceGUI we made, and then we've looped through each checkpoint in the checkpoints folder, and if the item we're looking at is a part, then we're cloning the GUI and setting its parent to the checkpoint, and then we're setting the text label's text to the name of the checkpoint, which if you followed my numbering system, you'll see why we did that in the first video now, because each text is a number. It's just easy, we don't have to do it manually. Obviously, every time you if you want to add a new stage now, you will have to do it manually, unless you make loads of stages at once and duplicate it all again, but that is up to you. If you want to like bulk make stages, it might be better just to do it in the command prompt again. But now I'm going to go to view and close the command bar. Now something you will see is if I hit test and play here, just so I spawn on the checkpoint, when I die, it takes a few seconds for me to spawn in. Now when people are playing obbies, this is something to keep in mind. They are going to probably die a lot, and having to wait 3 seconds before you respawn isn't very fun. So if you want to keep user retention, if you want to keep people playing, I recommend you actually change the respawn time, or maybe even disable it. To do that, you can go under players, and where it says respawn time, at the minute it's on 5 seconds. I'm just going to make it 0 so you respawn instantly. And you'll see now when I die, I respawn pretty much instantly. Maybe you don't want that, maybe you want it like half a second, you can do that. But I'm going to make it as instant as I can, because who wants to wait 5 seconds after dying in an obby when you're probably going to be dying a lot? That time adds up. You know, if you've died 10 times, you've been waiting 50 seconds of respawn time. What a waste. Okay, now we can actually get into this system. So first of all, I'm going to create a Leaderstats script. So we want one server script to have all our leader stats, just to keep everything nice and neat and in one place. So under server script service, I'm going to click the add button and add in a script. I'm going to right click and rename this to Leaderstats. Now if you don't know what Leaderstats are, I do recommend you check out my video on them. I believe the video is a little bit outdated. It covers everything, but it was an old video, so it might not explain things very well. But it does cover sort of the fundamental, like what is the leader stats basically. Anyway, in here we want to write code which will create a new leader stats folder, and it will create our stage value. So whenever the player joins the game, we want to do this. So game.players.player added :connect function player. Now this function here is called whenever a player joins the game, and it automatically passes in the player that joined as an argument. Now what we can say is local leader stats equals instance.new folder, and it's going to be inside of the player. So this is creating a new folder inside of the player. The comma player just means it's parent. So this is the parent, so it's going to be inside the player. And we'll say leaderstats.name equals, and it's very important you spell this exactly how I spell it, leaderstats, no spaces and no capital letters. Even the first letter has to be lowercase, because this is the Roblox default for generating the leader stats, which is the sort of display you see top right of every Roblox game, or almost every Roblox game if they have them. Now let's create our stage variable. So local stage, this is going to be instance.new. It's going to be an int value, because we're not going to have decimal stages. We're only going to have integer whole number stages. and the parent will be the leader stats. We want this to be within the leader stats folder. Now the name for this, I'm just going to call it stage. You don't have to call it stage. If you want to call it level or something, do go for it. Just bear that in mind. If you're calling it something else, when I refer to stage in any script throughout the series, you will call it level or whatever you've called it. Don't copy stage if you're not calling it stage. Now we'll say stage.value equals 1. That's because by default we want the starting stage to be stage 1. It doesn't really make sense to start on stage 0. That doesn't sound right. But if you want to do that, just set that to 0. If you want to start on stage 5 for some reason, just say it's 5. But I want my default starting stage to be stage 1. That's it for the Leaderstats script for now. And now if we was to hit test and play, I'm not going to spawn in, you'll see we've got stage 1 next to our name. So next we need to create a script inside each checkpoint, which is going to call code whenever the checkpoint is touched, which will update the stage number. This is going to be somewhat similar to the code we've done for our kill brick. So what I'm going to do is under stage 2, not stage 1, stage 2, I'm going to add in a script. The reason we're not doing it under stage 1 is because that is our default, that's our spawning stage. There are no previous stages, so it doesn't make sense to do it in stage 1 because no player is going to go from stage 0 to stage 1, unless of course you're starting at stage 0. In this script, we want to first, actually it makes sense just to go and copy our kill brick code. So let's go find our kill bricks, which we made in the last video, which is just here, and copy this code. I'm going to just select all of it, copy it, and paste it into our checkpoint script that we're making. Because it doesn't make sense to rewrite it all. This is the code. If you didn't get the kill brick from the last video, this is the code here. Now we are going to make a couple of changes regarding, rather than the humanoid, we want to get the player, because we want to check the leader stats, and the leader stats are within the player. So what we'll do is get rid of all this humanoid stuff and just say local player equals game dot players dot get get player from character, and we're going to pass in char, which is our character. If player then, so we're getting the player from the character. This is a built-in function that Roblox allows you to manipulate or to use. If the player exists, then we're going to get their leader stats. So local leader stats equals player dot. Actually, we'll use find first child find first child and then leader stats. Again, spelled exactly like this. Spelling is so important when it comes to programming. Next, we'll say if leader stats. Then we have discussed find first child in the previous video, I believe, but it just it's going to look, and if it doesn't exist, it will stop the whole program crashing. It will just set leader stats to nil or null. I don't know if it's nil or null. It's one of the two, and it just won't exist. So that's why we say if leader stats then. So if leader stats does exist, then we know the player has leader stats. So what we're going to do next is compare our stage to the name of the checkpoint. So obviously this is the name of this checkpoint is checkpoint 2. It's just the number 2. That's the name. It's 2. So we want to check if our stage is 1, then we're going to set the stage to 2. If that makes sense, because it doesn't make sense to set your stage to level 2 if you're on stage 0, because then you've skipped a stage. So you want to just do that check. So say if leader stats dot stage dot value is equal to, and we're going to use the toNumber function and pass in part.name -1 then. And what this just means is if the leader stat stage is, let's say 1 and this is 2, then it will work. If not, it's not. It's just a check to ensure that we're on the previous stage. Our current stage is the stage before this one that they've just touched, if that makes sense. The toNumber just converts the name to a number, because obviously the name is a number to us, but the program recognizes it as a string, because technically this is a string. The number 2, because it's a name, is a string, so we have to convert that to a number. And we can only do that because we recognize it is clearly a number. There's no letters. If you had letters in it, it won't work. That is why we went for 1, 2, 3, 4 instead of checkpoint 1, 2, 3, 4. Anyway, if this is the case, then we can say leaderstats.stage.value equals toNumber part.name. And if you wanted, we could make variables for these just to clean up the code, but I'm not going to bother. This just makes this their new current stage. And we can close this script. Now we need to put this script in each of the checkpoints. Again, we can just duplicate it, but if you've got loads of checkpoints, it's going to take time. We don't want it to be in checkpoint 1 because we're going to handle that checkpoint in a new script, which you're going to create in a second. So once again, I'm going to go View, Command Bar, get our command back up, and the clone, again, this one will be in the description. Click Enter. Has it done it? Yeah, it's done it for all of them. So I'll just close up the command bar again. I need my output back. Clear that. So obviously we don't need it. We don't need both of them in number 2, just one. And we don't need it in checkpoint 1. And let me just make sure it's gone into all our checkpoints. It has. Perfect. Now, again, we've still not made the respawn system, so you respawn on the part. So let me just play here above this checkpoint, just so I can quickly show you. As we jump across, our stage goes up to stage 2. Let's try and get to stage 3. I won't test all of these. I'll just do like the first 4 or so. Stage 3, and then we should go to stage 4. There we go, perfect. And you sort of see where we're coming from. Anyway, now we need to create the checkpoint handler script, is what I'm going to call it. So under server script service, I'm going to add in another script, and I will right click and rename this to checkpoint handler. And in here, we are going to deal with spawning the player on the checkpoints. So this is where we really piece everything together. This is sort of the final piece to the puzzle. We do need to add one little thing to the Leaderstats script, but this is sort of the final piece. This is what brings it all together. So first of all, we need to get the replicated storage service. So we just say replicated storage equals game : get service replicated storage. That way we can just easily access replicated storage. And we also want the run service, which we'll see why in a minute. Run service equals game : get service and run service. Right, now we're going to use something you may or may not have seen before. It's a little bit more advanced in the whole Roblox scripting scene, but you might have seen it, you might not have. We're going to type in _G, uppercase G, dot, and we're going to call the function player loaded equals function, passing in a player. Now you might not have seen this before, this might be new to you. What this means is basically we're creating a global function that is accessible to all server scripts using the _G table. So this _G is a table of global variables and functions. So what we've done is just made a brand new global function called player loaded, and it takes the player as a parameter. Now we're using this global table because we're going to, in the Leaderstats script, fire this function, and this prevents us having to use a remote event, for example, to fire a client just to fire back to the server. It just makes sense to do all this using the global table. I wouldn't put everything in the global table, only the things you really need global, because it can become memory inefficient. But less on that and more on the checkpoints. So we need to get our current stage. So local current stage, this is obviously going to be equal to the player's current stage. So player.leaderstats.stage.value. The dot value just allows us to get the number. I'm a bit conscious of time, so I'm trying to speed it up a little bit. Local stage part. This is going to be the checkpoint corresponding to the player's stage. So checkpoints folder, find first child, current stage. So if you're on stage 3, we're going to look for stage 3 for checkpoint 3. I just realised we've not created the checkpoints folder. That would actually help. So right at the top, I'm going to say checkpoints folder equals, and this is going to be equal to workspace : wait for child checkpoints. Now the reason we're using wait for child is because we want to wait for the checkpoint folders to load folder to load in. So this checkpoints folder will not be assigned. No more code is going to run until the checkpoints folder exists. Until this checkpoints folder here has loaded into the game, nothing else is going to happen. That just prevents errors. If we said .checkpoints, it may not have loaded by then, and then the checkpoints folder doesn't exist, and we get loads of errors later on in the code. So obviously this is the folder of all the checkpoints. Now what we need to do is just quickly go into Home, Game Settings, Avatar, and we need to make sure our avatar type is R15. just so we can use the humanoid root part. So we can say player.character.humanoid root part, spelled exactly like this, dot cFrame, spelled exactly like that, equals stage part dot cFrame plus vector3 dot new 0, comma, I'm going to go 3, comma 0. And what this does is it sets the position of the player's character to the checkpoint with a displacement of 3 studs on the y-axis. This prevents the player's character spawning inside the part and sort of getting stuck. So it spawns 3 studs above it and then it falls on top of the part. It just stops it getting stuck inside the part. Stage part.cFrame, that's sort of think of it as the position of the part, the stage part. I'm calling it stage part. It's the checkpoint that relates to their current stage. Now, what you'll see, depending on how fast things run, you may or may not see this. But if I go to stage 2 and then die and go to respawn, we don't spawn on the checkpoint. And the reason for that is because this is all happening so quick. The part isn't having time to sort of register. It's not having time to, when we respawn, to find that C-frame, if that makes sense. So we need to give it all it needs is 1 frame, just to allow everything to load from memory correctly. And just wait 1 frame, what we need is run service .heartbeat wait, just like that. And this will just wait 1 frame for the part to be in memory and be retrieved from memory. So if we now hit, we don't even need to use play here anymore. Actually, we do need to use play here, because under leader stats, we just need to quickly add in player.characterAdded :connect function, passing in the character. So this is a function similar to player added that's called every time the player's character spawns in. So if you die and the character respawns, this any code here will be ran, and it just automatically passes in the character as an argument. And under here we just need to say _g dot player loaded. Make sure you spell it exactly how you spell your function in the checkpoint handler, passing in, of course, the player, and this will just call our function. Now we don't even need to use play here anymore. We can just use play, and you'll see we spawn in on stage 1. We can jump across, hit stage 2. Let's say we're going to stage 3. Okay, that works. I just got up to stage 4, and oh no, we've missed a jump. Let's see, when we spawn in, do we spawn back on stage 3? Yes, we do. We're facing the right way as well. And let's just test 1 more. Let's go for stage 5. We'll test as well with the kill bricks. So we're on stage 5, we die to a kill brick, and we spawn back on stage 5. Perfect. Now, we've not made saving yet. We're going to do that in a couple of episodes' time, because there's just a couple more things I want to add before we save, because it just makes more sense to wait. But that is it for this video. So I know it was a bit longer, and I do apologise, but I hope you found it helpful. In the next video, we're going to look at skip stages. So if you get stuck, you can pay, like, say, 10 Robux and you can skip to the next stage. So I'll see you then. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.